When two souls forgot, they were one. A timeless Korean psychological tale of love, loss, and the untraceable thread of destiny. It began on a rainless day that felt like rain. Seoul was grey that morning, though the sky was clear, a kind of quiet heaviness that hung between the glass buildings like the pause between breaths. People moved in streaks of sound and color, yet everything seemed to move around her instead of with her. Her name was Eun-Ha, a restorer of old manuscripts at the National Museum. She spent her days breathing in dust from centuries past, carefully piecing together fragments of other people's forgotten words, but she rarely spoke her own. That morning, a delivery arrived, an unmarked box containing a ruined parchment. It was written in archaic Korean, half-burnt, and had no return address. A note taped to the lid read simply, "For the one who remembers what was never written." She laughed softly, thinking it was a prank by the archives team, but as she peeled back the paper, the scent of sandalwood hit her like deja vu. Her hands trembled before she could stop them. "Why? Do I know this smell?" she whispered. Inside was a fragmented poem, just 6 lines still visible, the rest eaten by time. Under twin moons, we vowed in silence. The thread cut, the souls divided. When two forget, the world forgets. Until the hour they meet again. And remember, they were one. She didn't understand why tears came. Not sadness, exactly. Something older, something that whispered, "I know this, I've lived this." That night, Eun-Ha dreamed of an old courtyard under red lanterns. She saw herself, or someone who looked like her, dressed in a white hanbok, standing beneath a Gingko tree. A man faced her, his face hidden by the light. "Do not forget me," he said, and she answered, trembling. "But what if forgetting is the only way to survive?" He smiled, heartbreak in his eyes. "Then I will find you, even in forgetting." When she woke, her pillow was damp. She couldn't remember his name, but her chest ached as if she'd lost him yesterday. 2 weeks later, she met Min-Jae. It was one of those coincidences that doesn't feel accidental. She had been sent to Gyeongju to study a private collection of Joseon-Era texts. The house belonged to an aging professor known for his reclusiveness, and his grandson was there to help her carry the heavy crate. "Are you Eun-Ha?" he asked, stepping into the storage room. She turned. He was tall, dressed simply, but his eyes, something in them made her forget her own name for a moment. "I am." "You must be Min-Jae," he nodded. "Grandfather said you'd come. He said you're the only one who can read the language of ghosts." She smiled at that. "Did he? Then maybe we'll both see something we're not supposed to." They walked side by side for days, surrounded by centuries of silence and paper. The air smelt of old ink and pine. Sometimes, Min-Jae would watch her fingers trace a line of forgotten poetry, and something inside him would jolt a recognition without a name. Once, as they catalogued a box of torn scrolls, he noticed her hand pause on a piece that contained just one symbol, a calligraphic circle, broken by a line. "You've seen that before," he said. She looked up, startled. "How did you know?" "Because I've seen it too," he whispered. They stared at each other, neither daring to ask how or when. The silence grew heavy between them, filled with a sense that something was repeating itself. That evening, they took a walk through the small courtyard garden. Fireflies drifted like memory fragments through the humid air. Eun-Ha said quietly, "Sometimes I feel like my dreams are just old films being replayed in another life." Min-Jae smiled faintly. "And you're the actress who doesn't know she's playing the same role again." "Then who are you?" she asked. He hesitated. "Maybe the one who keeps trying to rewrite the ending." She laughed softly, but it wasn't amusement, it was recognition. That night, Eun-Ha dreamed again. The same courtyard, the same Gingko tree, the same man this time. His face was clearer. It was Min-Jae, but the time was different. He was dressed in ancient garb, his voice trembling. "Eun-Ha, the kingdom has fallen. They will burn everything we wrote. Then let them," she said. "The truth will remember itself." He grasped her hand. "If we die tonight, promise me when you wake again, you'll find me. I promise." When she woke, her hands were clenched around nothing but air. Her skin smelled faintly of smoke. By the third day, neither of them could focus on their work. Every small thing, a word, a look, a shared silence carried the weight of déjà vu. At one point, Min-Jae asked, almost jokingly, "Do you believe in reincarnation?" She smiled, but her voice was soft. "I didn't. Not until now." "Why now?" "Because I think I'm leaving something I've already lost." He didn't reply, but his fingers brushed hers as he handed her a manuscript, and in that instant, both saw a flash that wasn't now. A candlelit room, a parchment burning, 2 hands clutching each other in the firelight. Both gasped, stepping back. What was that? She whispered. He shook his head, trembling. A memory that doesn't belong to me. That night, Eun-Ha received a call. The professor had passed away in his sleep. She and Min-Jae sat together in silence, unable to explain why their grief felt ancient, as if they had lost him before. Later, when Min-Jae drove her back to Seoul, the city lights glimmered like 1,000 unspoken words. She turned to him and said, "Do you ever feel like the world is just repeating a story until we remember the ending correctly?" He glanced at her, eyes unreadable. Maybe that's what love is, a story, so stubborn it keeps retelling itself until both sides finally remember. For a moment, neither spoke. But as the car passed under a tunnel, Eun-Ha saw, reflected faintly in the glass beside him, the face of the man from her dream, the one from another life overlapping Min-Jae's. She blinked, and it was gone. When she got home, she opened the mysterious parchment again. This time, she noticed faint markings near the edges she hadn't seen before, burnt words that, when pieced together, read, "If you find this, you are already searching for yourself." She sat in the dark, her hands trembling, the sound of rain finally falling outside, soft, relentless, like memory returning. The next few weeks blurred together ink, sleepless nights, and a quiet unease that clung to Eun-Ha like perfume she couldn't wash off. Min-Jae had gone back to Gyeongju for his grandfather's funeral, leaving her alone with too many unanswered thoughts. In her apartment, she kept the parchment on her desk beneath a glass paperweight. Sometimes she would glance at it and swear the letters shifted when she wasn't looking. Once, she thought she saw new words emerge, faint as breath on glass. Memory is the price of reunion. She told herself it was exhaustion. But deep down, something inside her, that quiet, irrational part, whispered that time was beginning to remember her. One late evening, while cataloging restoration notes, her phone buzzed. Min-Jae. His voice was low, strained. "Eun-Ha, I found something." "What kind of something?" "A portrait, in one of my grandfather's sealed boxes." There was a pause. He sounded hesitant, almost afraid to continue. "It's you, Eun-Ha, or someone who looks exactly like you. Dated 1798. She froze. "That's impossible. I'm sending you a picture." A few seconds later, the image appeared on her screen. An old parchment portrait of a woman in a white hanbok, hair tied in a simple braid, eyes calm yet sorrowful. At the bottom, written in faded calligraphy, "Lady Eun-Ha, chronicler of the forbidden texts." The breath left her chest. Forbidden texts. She'd just spent weeks studying similar materials, anonymous, banned records from the late Joseon period, mostly destroyed by royal decree. Historians believe they contained dangerous philosophies about reincarnation, soul binding, and destiny. She whispered, "Min-Jae, who painted this?" He hesitated. "That's not the only thing. There's a man beside her, his face half burned out, but the name beneath it says Minister Choi Min-Jae." The phone line went silent except for the sound of both of them breathing. "Eun-Ha," he said softly, "I think we've met before." They met again 3 days later in a tea house near Insadong. It was raining, the kind of soul rain that sounds like whispered confessions against the glass. When he walked in, her chest tightened, not because he was handsome, but because she already knew how his presence felt inside her memory. He sat opposite her, setting down an old folder. "I've been going through my grandfather's notes." He mentioned a legend, a pair of scholars during the late 1700s who defied the king by recording forbidden philosophies about the unity of souls. She leaned forward. "The same ones I've been restoring." He nodded slowly. "They were executed. The legend says the two souls swore to meet again in another lifetime, but..." He hesitated. "But what?" He opened the folder. Inside was a single line from his grandfather's handwriting. "When two souls forget they were one, they are doomed to repeat their deaths until memory breaks." Her stomach turned. "That can't be coincidence," she whispered. "Maybe not." He met her eyes. "Do you ever feel like something terrible happened between us, something we don't remember?" The question lingered in the air, like static. "I don't know," she said quietly. "But every time I look at you, I feel both comfort and guilt." He looked away, his jaw tightening. Maybe that's what trauma from another life feels like. That night, they went for a walk along a Cheonggyecheon stream. The city glowed in fractured reflections, like an illusion of peace painted over chaos. She said softly, "What if this is just delusion? What if our minds are projecting patterns because we want meaning?" He smiled faintly. "Maybe delusion is just memory, wearing a disguise." They stopped at a stone bridge. Raindrops rippled the water below. "Eun-Ha," he said suddenly, "what if the real reason we met wasn't to fall in love again, but to remember why we were separated?" She turned to him, his expression unreadable. caught between tenderness and fear. Then, quietly, she said, "Then, let's remember." Over the next few days, they began to dream the same dream. Each night, both found themselves in the same scene. A royal courtyard, fire-consuming scrolls, soldiers shouting, Eun-Ha, the woman in white, clutching a half-burned manuscript, Min-Jae in scholar's robes bleeding from a wound on his shoulder. "Run," he shouted. "No, not again," she screamed back. Every night, the dream ended differently. Sometimes one died, sometimes both, but always with the same final image, a broken circle drawn in blood. By the fifth night, both woke at 3:17 a.m., exactly the same time. She called him. "It's not a dream anymore." "I know," he said, voice shaking. "I can feel the wound." They decided to visit Gyeongju again, back to the old house where the portrait was found. Maybe the answer waited there. The journey was quiet, not awkward, but heavy, like a song whose next notes they already knew would hurt. The house stood silent, the mountains beyond it cloaked in mist. Inside, everything felt frozen in a moment that wasn't theirs. In the study, Min-Jae found an old cabinet they hadn't noticed before. Inside was a sealed scroll, marked with the same symbol from their dreams, the broken circle. Eun-Ha touched it, and for a second, her vision fractured. She saw flashes of another lifetime, fire, ink, tears, and his voice shouting her name. When she came to, she was on the floor, breathing hard. Min-Jae held her, terrified. "Eun-Ha, what happened?" "I remembered," she whispered. "We betrayed someone. That night, they unsealed the scroll. The parchment crackled as if alive. Inside, written in perfect calligraphy, was their own handwriting, both their names, both their signatures, both dates from 1798. It was a confession. We, Eun-Ha and Choi Min-Jae, record the truth of the soul's unity. Though it defies the throne and law, they will kill us for it. But we write because to forget is death greater than death itself." She stared at the ink, her hand trembling. "This is us," she whispered. He nodded. "And this is how we died." As they read further, a final line appeared at the bottom. One neither had written. "The punishment for defying the law of souls is to live again without memory, until remembrance brings ruin once more." The candle flickered. The air felt suddenly wrong, dense, electric, like the edge of a storm. Eun-Ha stood slowly. Then, "Remembering means we die again." He looked at her, pale. "Or worse, that we were never supposed to meet at all." That night, as rain hammered the old roof, they sat across from each other, unable to sleep. The silence was unbearable. Every glance was both love and dread. Eun-Ha whispered, "Do you ever think destiny is just a loop we call romance?" Min-Jae's eyes glistened. Maybe the universe keeps repeating the pain until one of us refuses to continue." A tear slid down her cheek. "Then who breaks it?" He reached across the table and took her hand. "Maybe the one who remembers last." The candle blew out. When morning came, Min-Jae was gone. His car, his bag, everything. Only the portrait remained, propped against the wall. But something was different. The eyes of the woman in white were now closed. And beneath it, written faintly in fresh ink, "Do not search for me. Forgetting is mercy." Eun-Ha fell to her knees, sobbing. Outside, the first snow began to fall, thin, soundless, endless. So felt different when Eun-Ha returned. It wasn't the city that had changed, it was her eyes. The colors were too sharp now. The air carried faint echoes of voices that didn't belong to this time. She began noticing things she couldn't unsee. A man in the subway reading an old scroll instead of a phone, a woman bowing to an invisible figure on a bridge, whispers that spoke in fragments of her dreams. Every reflection felt slightly delayed, as if the world was lagging or she was. She kept telling herself Min-Jae had left because he was afraid. The scroll had shattered something between them. But nights became unbearable. She heard him in dreams, calling her name in the burning courtyard again and again. "Do not forget me, even if forgetting is mercy." One night, she woke at 3:17 a.m. again. The parchment on her desk was glowing faintly. Her hand moved on its own, tracing the burned edges. The words shimmered, rearranging into something new. The living remember forward, the dead remember backward. Where they meet, time folds. Then nothing. The light died, and her hand was bleeding. A small cut across her palm, the same place Min-Jae's blood had fallen in her dreams. The next morning, she visited the museum to distract herself. The air smelled of varnish and quiet electricity, the kind of silence found only in rooms full of ghosts. Her colleague, Ji-won, noticed her pallor. "You okay? You look like you've been seeing things." Eun-Ha forced a smile, "Just not sleeping much." "Well, sleep or not, the director wants you to examine another private donation, old scrolls again." "From who?" Ji-won handed her the form. Someone named Choi Min-Jae. The world tilted. Eun-Ha nearly dropped the clipboard. He left this here? Ji-won frowned. No, it came by courier. No sender, but the paperwork's official. Why? Eun-Ha just whispered. Because he shouldn't exist anymore. That evening, when everyone had gone, she opened the crate marked with his name. Inside were dozens of documents, not from centuries ago, but typed, printed, annotated. Her own name appeared on several of them. She picked one up. Case study. Subject 14 amperes. Eun-Ha and 14B. Min-Jae. Shared Reincarnation Trauma Research. Seoul University Cognitive Memory Division. 2024. Her blood ran cold. 2024, next year. She scanned the text, her eyes burning. Both subjects claimed to experience recurring dreams of past lives tied to the unity theory of the soul. Hypothesis: if two connected souls rediscover their prior bond, the psyche destabilizes, resulting in memory collapse and dissociation. Subject 14 amperes and 14B both terminated within 48 hours of contact. Her hands shook. No, there were attached photos. Her, Min-Jae, hooked to EEG monitors, eyes closed. Below, handwritten notes in the margin. Cycle 17, results identical, must reset memory again. Her heart pounded. Cycle 17, she turned the page and froze. There was a video still attached, a grainy image from a lab. She pressed play. Two figures sat across from each other, electrodes attached to their temples. A voice calm, clinical spoke from off camera. Subjects 14 amperes and 14B. Do you remember each other? The woman's voice, her own, whispered, always. Do you understand what happens when you do? The man Min-Jae said softly, we die again. And why do you keep meeting? They both answered in unison, because forgetting hurts more. Then, static. The screen went black. Eun-Ha stumbled backward, the papers scattering around her. Her breathing came ragged. She whispered to the empty room, who's doing this to us? Then, a voice, calm behind her. I am. She turned. A man stood there older, wearing a lab coat. His eyes were kind, yet utterly detached. Professor, she whispered. She recognized him, the one who'd once overseen the museum's archives. He nodded. You've come far this time, Eun-Ha. Most cycles end before the memory stabilizes. Her knees nearly gave way. Cycles? What cycles? He stepped closer. You and Min-Jae are part of an experiment. The human mind cannot withstand full memory of unity, of oneness. So, we divided you, reintroduced you lifetime after lifetime to observe how long it takes before you remember too much. She shook her head violently. That's insane, he smiled gently. It's mercy. Every time you remember, the world fractures. Reality reboots itself around your grief. Her voice broke. Where's Min-Jae? Gone, for now. We pulled him out when the loop began collapsing. Pulled him out, she whispered. You'll see soon enough. He placed a small mirror on the table. Look, Eun-Ha, tell me what you see. She looked and gasped. The reflection wasn't hers. It was Min-Jae's. Her voice failed. What is this? The professor said softly. You were one consciousness, divided into two. We separated soul from shadow. You and he are fragments of a single being, endlessly trying to find itself again. She stared, trembling. Then, what are we now? Sue, he smiled faintly. An experiment that fell in love with its own reflection. She screamed and threw the mirror. It shattered, but there was no sound. The world rippled, colors bleeding together, lights stuttered, time folded like paper. For a moment, she was in the courtyard again. 1,798. The fire, the ink, the screams. Then 1,922 lovers separated by war. Then 2024, 2 patients on hospital beds. Then, now, and all of it happening at once. She saw every version of herself crying out for Min-Jae, every version of him reaching back and failing. She understood. The punishment was never death. It was remembering. The professor's voice echoed faintly through the collapsing light. Eun-Ha, you can end it now. Forget him, and the world resets. You'll live peacefully, never knowing loss again. She looked down the broken parchment still glowing faintly on the table. The line burned across it. When two souls forget they were one, the world heals. Her hand hovered. If she tore the parchment, she would forget. If she didn't, the world would break again. And somewhere through the blur of time, she heard Min-Jae's voice whisper, forgetting is messy, but remembering is love. Tears blurred her vision. She whispered, then I choose love. And the light swallowed her. When she opened her eyes, she was back in Seoul, morning sunlight through her window, the sound of traffic outside. Her phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. You're late for work, Miss Choi. She frowned. Miss Choi? Then she noticed the nameplate on her desk. Choi Min-Jae, PhD Cognitive Research Division. The mirror on the wall reflected her, but not her. The reflection smiled. Morning sunlight spilled through the blinds, painting bars of light across the desk. The room was both familiar and foreign, everything arranged with clinical precision. A monitor hummed quietly, lines of code dancing on the screen. Eun-Ha blinked, trying to shake off the dream or what she thought was a dream. But when she reached for her phone, her reflection in the dark screen wasn't hers, it was his. Her breath hitched. Min-Jae! The voice that answered came from her own mouth, but it wasn't her tone. It was his calm, deep, disbelieving. We did it again. She stumbled back, staring at her reflection as it moved half a second out of sync. What's happening? She whispered. The reflection smiled faintly. You wanted to remember. You chose love. Now we are one again. The world wavered. The air around her shimmered like heat on glass. She felt two minds inside her skull, one heartbeat, two rhythms overlapping. It wasn't possession. It was reunion. Hours or moments passed. Time was losing structure. Memories from all their lives began surfacing at once. The scholar and the scribe beneath the burning tree. The lovers separated by war. The patients hooked to machines. And now two souls trapped in one body, breathing the same confusion. Every lifetime had ended with separation. But this one had merged them. She walked to the window. Outside, Seoul pulsed in slow motion. Cars drifted like ghosts. Pedestrians moved as if caught between frames. Is this real? She whispered. Her reflection or the voice in her head answered softly. Real is what remembers you back. She turned and saw the parchment on her desk sealed in glass, but this time it wasn't burned or old. It was pristine. The ink was still wet. Across it, written in their combined handwriting. When two souls forget they were one, the world heals. When they remember, the world begins again. Her pulse quickened. What does that mean? His voice whispered from within. It means we're not the only ones. Suddenly, the room flickered once, twice. When it stabilized, everything was slightly different. The furniture reversed sides. The clock ticked backward. On the wall now hung a framed photograph, two people, standing side by side. Her and Min-Jae smiling, wedding rings visible. Her throat closed. This isn't my memory. It's one of ours, the voice murmured. You're remembering forward again. She backed away, trembling. Then, what happens now? The voice hesitated, almost tender. Now, we decide if the story ends or repeats. The computer monitor flickered on by itself. A line of text appeared, no keyboard, no hands. Experiment cycle 18 initiated. Memory convergence detected. Run termination or continuation. Below it, two options, forget or remember. She stared, frozen. If she pressed forget, she could start again, new life, new peace, no haunting past. If she pressed remember, she would stay fused with Min-Jae, in a world unraveling but honest. Her hand hovered. What would you choose? She asked softly. You already know, the voice replied. She smiled a sad, luminous smile and pressed both keys at once. The screen exploded into light. Reality convulsed walls stretching into infinity, sounds dissolving into pure vibration. She felt herself unspooling, not dying, but unfolding into something vaster. For a timeless moment, she saw every lifetime stacked like glass slides, each version of them reaching, missing, breaking, remembering, forgetting over and over, all at once. And then she saw the truth. They had never been two. They had only ever been fragments of a single consciousness, split to understand the pain of separation, to taste love through distance. Every universe, every time, every heartbeat, a mirror reflecting itself in longing. And now, the mirror was whole. Silence followed, then darkness. When sound returned, it was ocean waves. When light returned, it was dawn. Eun-Ha opened her eyes on a beach that glowed faintly pink under a half-moon sky. No city, no lab, no parchment, just the hum of eternity and the scent of salt and wind. She stood, her white dress rippling around her ankles. A figure walked toward her from the horizon barefoot, smiling gently. It was Min-Jae. Neither spoke. They just stood there, the distance between them shrinking until it no longer existed. Their hands met no electricity, no collapse, no pain. He whispered, "We remembered without dying." She smiled. "Maybe that's the end of the experiment." He shook his head softly. Or the beginning of living. Time began to dissolve again, but differently this time. Not as a fracture, but as emerging. The sea rose upward like mist, becoming sky. Their bodies turned translucent, threads of gold weaving between them. The world itself seemed to sigh in relief, as if something ancient had finally exhaled. And in that stillness, a faint voice, perhaps theirs, perhaps the universe's, spoke the final line. When two souls forget they were one, they suffer. When they remember, they disappear, not into death, but into everything. Years or eternities later, a young restorer named Ji-won found a sealed box in the museum basement. Inside was a parchment crisp and unbound, with only one sentence written in perfect ink. This world is born every time two souls remember they were one. He frowned, smiling faintly. Strange, he murmured. No author's name. As he placed it on the desk, a faint scent of sandalwood filled the air. Outside, rain began to fall soft, endless, familiar. Moral of the story. Sometimes love and destiny are not about finding another, they are about recognizing the parts of ourselves we've exiled. The greatest mercy is forgetting pain, but the deepest truth is remembering who we are when we stop dividing ourselves. This is Folktales of Many Tribes. See you on another one.